Hello everyone, I'm Keen947, aka Wolfkeen. And well, I've put this off for way too long. Today, I'm going to be doing my top 5 favorite episodes and least favorite episodes of Season 1 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Okay, so here are the rules, guys. There really isn't any. I mean, these episodes are being judged on an overall enjoyment level. How much I enjoyed the episode, how much I liked the episode, and how much I'd be willing to rewatch these episodes on my favorite category. On the least favorite category, these are going to be judged on how much these episodes have pissed me off on, certain factors, on certain levels, like if characters were out of character and stuff like that, and overall why I wouldn't go back to watch these episodes. So, we're going to begin with my least favorite episodes of Season 1. And to be honest, one of the episodes that's a prime choice for a top 5 least favorite list almost made it, but it just missed it.
Number 6.
I thought long and hard on this choice because this is a prime choice many people use in their top 5 least favorite lists on My Little Pony. But for me, Griffon The Brush Off, written by Cindy Morrow, just misses the list. Oh, don't get me wrong, I still think this is a pretty bad episode in some cases, but like I said in my review, after rewatching it, I found the episode to be meh in most cases. Now, I know people wonder why I hate this episode. Well, I'm just going to explain it bluntly. I don't like Gilda at all. It's not because she speaks in 90s terms. Okay, it's part of it, but it's not the main reason why I don't like Gilda. The main reason I don't like Gilda is that they make her out to be this bad girl character, and really, that's really all we get from her. There really isn't a lot more backstory or other stuff like that that we get from Gilda in more ways than one. Get me? Like, if there was more backstory that was given to us, like from Rainbow Dash, since she did go to school with her at Junior Speedster's Flight School, if I'm saying it correctly, then maybe I'd be willing to let Gilda go and actually like her personality in some cases. But in many cases, she suffers the same problem as Sunset Shimmer. Not enough backstory information. And that's kind of why I don't like Gilda, because she just seems like a generic bad girl character, and some of her pranks just go way too far. Especially how she, causes Fluttershy to cry in the middle of public, and even blows up during a party in public against Pinkie Pie. That is mean beyond belief, if you really ask me. But the reason why I don't hate this episode to that extent is because I find this episode to be hilariously funny. The pranks that Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash be doing to all of the ponies, those are pretty funny because I used to do those kind of pranks when I was younger. And yeah, this is a situation I've been in, trying to introduce an old friend to a new friend. I just did that recently with my friend John and my friend Jesus. I was like, oh God, please let them be good friends. And I was thankful that they did become good friends. But that's what I'm trying to say. I've been through this situation, and I can relate to it in some cases. You're worried that your new friend is not going to do well with your old friend, or vice versa. And luckily, for me it worked, but for Gilda it did not. But don't worry, guys. This does not make it into the top 5. On the other hand,
Number 5.
It's Look Before You Sleep by Charlotte Fullerton. I mean, do I need to say anything about this episode as to why I think it's bad? My problem with this episode is that all 3 characters are out of character in more ways than one. I mean, seriously, Applejack and Rarity are acting like complete kids to each other. I know some people have made the argument, oh, they're teenagers and stuff like that. Hell, even Digibrony made that argument in his video. Fine, but they have established businesses and run them. And they're acting like a bunch of 10-year-olds doing did so, did not thing. And that's just kind of stupid in more ways than one. Not to mention that it's a slumber party. What are you going to do that's interesting at a slumber party? There's nothing interesting of a backdrop for that one. And Twilight in this episode. Holy Christ, was Twilight oblivious in this episode. Like when a tree was inside her house, instead of figuring out a way to get rid of the tree, she was reading through her book of slumber parties saying like, they do have a section about outdoor slumber parties. Does this count as camping? Is that what we're doing? Twilight, you're an idiot. Just get rid of the tree. And that's what really pissed me off in this episode, because all the characters in this episode were vastly out of character or were major assholes to each other. I mean, seriously, Applejack made Rarity go out into the rain, soaking rain. That could have gotten her sick in more ways than one. But then again, this episode is tame compared to my feelings towards the other episodes.
Number 4.
A Bird and a Hoof, also written by Charlotte Fullerton. Also known as the You've Been Trolled episode. I mean, seriously, this episode is just one big troll episode, and it just feels like, it just fuels the flames of Trollestia in more ways than one. Because everyone was saying for the longest time that Celestia's a troll and stuff like that. Well, her bird is also a troll, and I find that to be stupid in more ways than one, if you ask my honest opinion. I just really do not like this episode because of the concepts that they established here. Okay, I do get that Fluttershy tries to take care of animals, but the fact that she took this bird from Celestia without her knowing, and then this bird knew what he was doing the entirety of the episode by playing around with Fluttershy until finally he died, and then he got reborn as a phoenix. Like, you could have saved us 22 minutes of an episode. Instead, this bird just ate it all up, being the troll that he was. And that's what bugs me with this episode, is that this bird knew what he was doing, and Fluttershy can communicate with animals, which means this bird could have told Fluttershy what was wrong with him, but he refused just to play a game with Fluttershy. Even Celestia was saying that I believe that Philomena was pretty much playing a game with you. I don't like this episode because of that fact, because this just feels like a gigantic time waster. That's what this episode feels like. Don't get me wrong, I do like the Benny Hill theme playing in the episode like they did in episode 3, but that's a small thing considering the rest of the episode. And I'm sorry to say, but this episode really doesn't have a lot to offer. It's not a funny episode, it's not an interesting episode, and it's not even an enjoyable episode at times. It's just boring and a time waster, and that's just being honest.
Number 3.
I really didn't want to put this episode on the list. I really didn't. But Over a Barrel by Dave Polsky is freaking stupid. I know a lot of people are about to say, oh, you're about to bash this episode because they misrepresent natives and settlers. No, I'm glad they didn't attempt for that, because that is not something you want to have in a kid's show. That's being honest. You don't want to have something like that in a kid's show. However, what bugs me with this episode is the fact of the matter that the main 6 made the situation worse. I mean, really, really think about it in more ways than one. The main 6 made everything in this situation worse, because at one point, Brayburn and Little Strongheart were willing to talk with each other, and they're prolific members of their communities. Brayburn's a prolific member of Appaloosa. Little Strongheart is a prolific member of her tribe. They could talk to their leaders, and that would lead to a peaceful resolution. Instead, you had Applejack and Rainbow Dash butting into the conversation and not knowing when to shut the fuck up. And that just bugged me in more ways than one. And if you need more proof as to why the main 6 made the situation worse, how about Pinkie Pie's You Gotta Share, You Gotta Care song, which drove Chief Thunderhoofs to attack Appaloosa, and at one point, he relented. He was not going to attack, and even Rainbow Dash says, he looks like he's not going to attack. And then Pinkie Pie starts singing her You Gotta Share, You Gotta Care song, and that's what broke the straw on the camel's back, and Chief Thunderhoofs attacked. Besides Twilight, Rarity, and Fluttershy, every other character should not have been in the episode. It should have had only those 3 in many respects. I can maybe see the episode working with just those 3 characters. It didn't need to have every member of the main 6 if you ask my honest opinion. As a matter of fact, this episode probably would have been better without the main 6 if you ask my honest opinion. I know I'm probably asking for a lot, but think about it. I think this episode would be a lot better if none of the main 6 was in this episode, and it was just about the natives and the settlers. There have been plenty of shows and cartoons to have episodes without main characters, main villains, or otherwise. Good example of this is Zuko Alone, which is a great episode in more ways than one, because not only do we get more backstory into Zuko, it doesn't involve any of the main characters. None of the main characters make an appearance. The only one who's in there is Zuko. And look what happens in Season 2. They have solo episodes, and many of these solo episodes are good. But this episode having all of the main six and the fact that it made the situation worse is what irritates me in more ways than one.
Number 2.
Cindy Marr, are you trying to piss me off? Like, really? Are you really trying to piss me off? Because that's how I feel after watching Owl's Well That Ends Well. This episode can be summed up in one word. 2. Flawed logic. Because everything in this episode, all the logic in this episode is flawed as fuck. And the reason why I say that is because of one simple fact. Twilight got the owl Aloysius because she wanted help at night. Owls are nocturnal. I'm okay with this discussion, except for the fact that we never see that owl awake at night at any time in that episode, besides the near beginning and the near end of the episode. Hell, even in later episodes, we don't see that owl awake during night. We see it awake during the day. Look at Inspiration Manifestation. Look at Just for Sidekicks. You need help at night, and yet this owl is awake every single morning episode it's around. So your logic of needing help at night, that now owls are nocturnal, is complete and utter bullshit. And what really bugs me is the fact of the matter of how they portrayed Spike in this episode. They made Spike out to be an antagonist, and I didn't like that. Why would you make Spike out to be an antagonist? He did nothing wrong. He didn't deserve that kind of a role or anything like that. And Twilight was just completely oblivious to Spike's feelings in more ways than one. She never once considered that he would probably get jealous. She never once considered that he's probably having problems. And she never once considered that doing this may put him at ends with himself and may make him question his ability. Not once did she question this. And that's bullshit in more ways than one. Not to mention the logic of how she found Spike at the end. Saying, oh, I found you through your ketchup-covered feet. It rained! It rained! The logic in this episode is flawed. This episode has so many problems that I just can't begin to talk about it. And if I do, I will go into another mental breakdown. And I don't want that.
Number 1.
I guess you are trying to piss me off, Cindy Morrow, because you wrote my least favorite episode of Season 1. I fucking hate every single thing about the Showstoppers. The Showstoppers I consider to be one of the worst episodes of Season 1, if not the worst episode of the entire series. The reason why I hate this episode is because it gets worse and worse the more seasons pass by and the Cutie Mark Crusaders don't get their Cutie Marks. I would have been okay with Showstoppers if they hinted at what their abilities were. Like maybe gave us speculations like they did with Pinky Apple Pie. In Pinky Apple Pie, it was speculated that Pinky was probably a relative of the apples. It was never confirmed. It was never denied. It was left as speculation. If they did something like this with this episode, I would have been okay with accepting it. But because they blatantly showed us what their talents are, it becomes annoying as they keep trying to find their talents. Because you see them trying to find their talents more and more, and it's so stupid because... Think about it, guys. We know what their talents are, and we're watching this episode seeing them trying to get their talents. It's like, hey, look, they're going to get their talents at scuba diving, but we already know what they are. Hey, they're going to get their talents at memory guessing, but we already know what they are. Hey, they're going to get their talents at mountain climbing, but we already know what they are. Hey, they're going to get their talents in the Showstopper show, but we already know what they are. That's the problem with this episode. Every single time they go looking for their cutie marks, we're all like, but we already know what it is. So... this episode gets worse and worse as the seasons progress. Because every single episode, they're obsessive over the cutie marks, cutie pox, Ponyville Confidential and stuff like that. It makes this episode worse. Because the more and more the CMCs don't realize what their talents are, the worse and worse this episode gets. And don't even get me started on the off-key song. Granted, that song is a guilty pleasure of mine, I won't lie. But it still is aggravating in more ways than one. Like, this aggravates me more than Spike's failed song in more ways than one. And that's being honest. I hate everything about this episode. And that's being honest. Okay. Bashing time over. Now, let's get into the good stuff. And let's talk about an episode that just missed making it into my top 5 favorite episodes of Season 1.
Number 6.
Tell me, Oliver, if you're watching this, please forgive me. But Suited for Success, written by Charlotte Fullerton, just misses my top 5. The reason why I say this is because while I love Suited for Success, it just doesn't stack up to the other episodes down this list that I really do love. However, I am going to talk about real quick what do I like about Suited for Success. It has great visuals, like some of the best visuals of Season 1, if not of the series in many cases. I love Art of the Dress as a song. Like, the song itself is absolutely phenomenal, and it's catchy as hell. The reprised version and the normal version of Art of the Dress. Plus, I kind of liked how, how far Rarity would go for her friends. A lot of people try to say that Rarity is a greedy bitch or something like that. This episode proves otherwise. I mean, she spent like a whole lot of her time, not to make one set, but 2 sets of dresses, and set up a fashion show to have them shown off. Like, Rarity did not have to do that. She did not have to do this, but she did. And this is why I definitely say she earns the element of generosity. And honestly, I do like the resolution at the end. Great episode, it just misses my top 5 in more ways than one.
Number 5.
There, now you can't say I'm beating up on Cindy Morrow, because Winter Wrap-Up is on my list. Winter Wrap-Up is a great episode in more ways than one. I know some people don't like Winter Wrap-Up. Well, let me give my point of view as to why I like Winter Wrap-Up. Same thing like Suited for Success. It has great visuals. I love the Winter Wrap-Up song. As a matter of fact, I have it in my MP3. And I do like the idea of trying to find your place in a traditional event. I mean, it's kind of like being out of place in more ways than one. Think about it. Twilight's from Canterlot. She is used to the seasons being changed with magic. Now she has to partake in this event where they clean up winter on their own using no magic. That's pretty much like, me being used to power tools and having to get used to using regular tools because that's tradition. I would feel out of place in many cases, but I would still do my best to play my part. The one thing I love about Winter Wrap-Up, though, is it shows the ingenuity of Ponyville. It definitely shows how Ponyville is able to keep themselves going in more ways than one, and shows how smart, capable, and I really don't have any other words for them in more ways than one. Ingenious, I think, is the best word, because think about it. They have enough power to make a tornado, they have enough power to clean up winter, they have enough power to clean up the fall and stuff like that. It shows that Ponyville, even though they really use no magic to clean the seasons, they could still do the same amount of work that unicorns can. And I find this to be astonishing in more ways than one, because it shows how much ingenuity Ponyville has. And it kind of makes me wish I could live in a town like that. That sounds like a great town I would love to live in.
Number 4.
Amy Keaton Rogers writing a finale for My Little Pony. That's actually kind of cool, because The Best Night Ever is a great episode in more ways than one. The reason why I like Best Night Ever, I've already explained this. I do like the songs, like At the Gala. At the Gala is a really great song. I love the Pony Pokey. Like, I don't know why, but I always find myself dancing to the Pony Pokey, and no, I won't do it in camera for ya. And I like seeing the main 6 in their dresses. I mean, I already said it in my My Little Pony vlog. They are cute in their dresses, and I don't care if I never get my man card back. Do you hear me, ANY? I don't care! But, I love this episode, not only for that fact as well, but I do like how the screen time is divided between all members of the main 6. It's not like one member of the main 6 gets more screen time than the other. No, it feels like they all get equal amount of screen time, and I love just how far they're willing to go to make this event happen. I know some people will try to say that's kind of mean in some cases, but I can understand them. Like, if you're in a special event, you're going to try your best to make it the best event ever. And that's just being honest in more ways than one, if you ask my honest opinion. So yeah, Best Night Ever. Great finale. I really hope Amy Keaton Rogers writes another finale, because she looks like she could.
Number 3.
Another Amy Keaton Rogers episode. How about that? Yep, number 3 is Fall Weather Friends. What can I say about this episode? This was the episode that made me into a brony in more ways than one. And I already explained everything I had to in my Fall Weather Friends vlog. If you want to know what I'm talking about, go look at my Fall Weather Friends vlog episode. But I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. The reason why I love Fall Weather Friends is because I love the competitive nature between Applejack and Rainbow Dash. The reason why is because me and my friend White Noise had the same competitive nature with each other. We would smack talk, we would cheat against each other, we would fight in many cases, and, you know, we would try to be good sports, but sometimes we would go against each other to the point that we would lose our sportsmanship. And that's just being honest. Like, that's what happens when you get competitive. When you get competitive with a good friend, tensions can rise. Sometimes, you know, you'll forget about sportsmanship and other stuff like that. And that's just being honest. Not to mention the visuals in this episode was really good in more ways than one. Seeing all these different events and stuff like that, as well as the running of the leaves, honestly, people are saying that, why didn't we get to see the games and Equestria games? I think this episode is a great example of how they should have done the Equestria games. Though the only reason they couldn't do it the same way as Fall Weather Friends is because Fall Weather Friends focused on Applejack and Rainbow Dash. In the Equestria games, Rainbow Dash was only in one event, so it wouldn't work the same way as Fall Weather Friends. But that's why I like Fall Weather Friends. We get to see every event that goes on between these two, and we pretty much see some of the hardships and some of the tactics that they go on each other. From flipping signs, to knocking beehives, to dropping sap, to smacking them with branches. Like, it shows how far they're willing to go for a competitive nature. And not to mention, like I said, I just really like this episode in more ways than one. It reminded me of my competitive nature with my friend White Noise, and it's still one of my favorite episodes of Season 1. And I'm glad I saw this episode, because it was the one that made me into a brony.
Number 2.
Alright, guys. I know someone's screaming it right now, but here it is. A Megan McCarthy episode. Party of One. God, do I love this episode. The reason why I love this episode, like, I'm saying that a lot, ain't I? But why I like this episode is for one reason. I am a massive fan of mental breakdowns. Like, I am a massive fan of mental breakdowns. I just love to see characters lose it. And this episode had it in spades in more ways than one. I mean, seriously. When Pinkie Pie went Pinkamena, it was so funny, so interesting, and so scary in more ways than one. I mean, she's talking with inanimate objects. That is insane. Like, how do you break down to the point that you're talking with inanimate objects? That's... Do I really need to say anything else? I do like that we get an idea of what Pinkie Pie's parties is like, and I do like that the main six care for Pinkie Pie. It's not like, oh, after one party we're done, we're not going to go to any more parties. They went ahead and planned a surprise party for Pinkie Pie's birthday, even though they had a party just the other day. This shows how good friends the main six are. The thing is like, I know they weren't telling Pinkie Pie, but that's the thing. It's a surprise party. You're not supposed to tell Pinkie Pie. And I just love what Pinkie Pie was doing in this episode. Like, this episode was funny. Like, this episode was funny as hell in more ways than one. Just seeing Pinkie Pie, like, putting on Groucho glasses to try to track the main six. How she was in a hay bale with a trench coat and Groucho glasses. Like, I really can't say anything else about this episode. Visually, it's good. Story-wise, it's good. I love Pinkie's mental breakdown. And overall, it is one of my favorite episodes of Season 1. However, number 1 is just a little more better.
Number 1.
It had to be. There's no other choice on this list. It had to be this one. Ladies and gentlemen, my number 1 is the Cutie Mark Chronicles, written by M.A. Larson. What can I say about this episode that I did not say in my vlog? Like, honestly, what can I say? I'm a huge fan of lore and history in shows, and this episode giving us the backstory of all main six characters of their cutie marks was insane, because it gave us a backdrop into, like, who they are. I mean, and the way that they earn their cutie marks is pretty cool in more ways than one. Most of them in most cases, because Applejack, she wanted to live in Manhattan, live a high society life. Pinkie Pie was living on a rock farm. I did not get this. Like, I did not guess this. Like, I didn't think Pinkie Pie lived on a rock farm. That was, like, a weird choice, and it worked. Then you have Fluttershy, who used to live in Cloudsdale, but now lives down below because of the animals. You have Rainbow Dash, who basically earned her Cutie mark by performing the Sonic Rain Boom, and basically all members of the main six earned their Cutie marks thanks to Rainbow Dash and the Sonic Rain Boom. Basically making out that they all owe their Cutie marks to Rainbow Dash, and that they were all connected and friends from the very beginning. I know that sounds extremely and utterly cheesy, but I'm with this idea that sometimes when you meet your friends, it's not by chance, it's fate. Because half of my friends, I feel like I was lucky to meet them. Like, my friend Headshot, I feel like I was real lucky to meet him one day. My friend Jonathan, aka Diamante, I feel like I was lucky to meet him. Like, I was destined to meet him in some cases. Like, I do believe in this idea that sometimes you're connected to your friends even before you met them. And that's what it feels like. It's like certain people I'm able to get on with really quickly and become friends with, while others, they just stay acquaintances or associates of mine. And that's really about it. But really, this episode had everything. Great backstory, great visuals, great storytelling, great pacing, and I just loved how it involved every character, basically. It involved all the main six, the CMCs, and otherwise. I know a lot of people try to say this is a CMC episode. I don't agree with that. I think this is a main six episode more than it is a CMC episode, since we delve more into the main six's backstories than we do the CMCs getting their cutie marks in more ways than one. All in all, phenomenal episode. I love it. Emmy Larson, you did your job. And there we go, guys. That is my top 5 favorite and top 5 least favorite episodes of Season 1 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. I hope you enjoyed the list, and if you have any disagreements with my choices or have your own top 5 or bottom 5 you would like me to check out, go ahead and leave a comment below on your top 5 and least favorite top 5 episodes. And if you have a video you've done of this subject already and want me to watch it, go ahead and leave that down below too, because I'm always willing to see other people's opinions on different episodes. So guys, until next time, I'm Keen47, aka Wolfkeen. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, guys, take care.